welcome to the Get Fit with Jodelle podcast. I am, as usual, Jodelle, and sometimes you, my listeners, request guests that you would like me to have on and have interviewed, and sometimes I'm actually getting contacted by various bloggers or professionals in the health field or doctors that want to be on the show. And rarely do folks ever come across my email presenting themselves like my next guest did. So I get these emails and I'm like, yeah, okay, I don't really want to promote this product or have this person on, or it doesn't resonate. But as soon as I read his bio email and saw what he was up to, I knew I wanted to have him on the show because I believe he will definitely resonate with you guys, my listeners, and he'll be someone you glean a lot of new, fresh ideas about when it comes to optimizing your health, trying some new hacks, figuring out what works for you anecdotally. So I'd like to welcome Michael Kummer, who is a healthy living and technology enthusiast, a professional blogger and vlogger. He's got a lot of great videos on his YouTube channel and quick tips and ideas about how to live in the modern world but not be affected by it. And he's a proponent of mitigating EMF and blue light, which I love, as well as optimizing sleep, health, and well-being, and has shared the benefits of these strategies multiple times on his different platforms. So I'm excited to have Michael on to speak to you about how EMFs affect your health, how body temperature impacts your sleep, how to live a healthy meat-based lifestyle. I love my meat, so I like to meet those meat-based people. And how keto actually long-term isn't a great idea. So we're going to hear a little bit about that too. So Michael, let's start there, because you, like so many of us at one point in time, tried a ketogenic lifestyle, but ended up feeling like it ultimately led to some more health issues. And yet you found more healing to be stemming from an animal-based eating approach. So tell us about that, and maybe some reasons why long-term keto is not so ideal.
Well, thanks first of all for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate it, and on your channel. But yeah, I started out with my entire health journey. Really started out by removing sugars from my diet. That was really my entry point into everything that I do and live now. And from there, I transitioned to a paleo diet, and later on to a ketogenic diet, before ending up on, as you said, on an animal-based diet. Mm-hmm. And I don't necessarily I might have said it, but I don't necessarily mean that keto is not going to work for anyone long term. I think, and I actually recently had a chat with Don D'Agostino. He's a researcher in the field of low carb eating. And he shared some stories of patients that have been on a ketogenic diet for 30 years and they are thriving on it. Those were especially those that had, issues that led them to adopt a ketogenic lifestyle. But I've come to realize that it really depends a little bit on what you do and how your life looks like, whether or not long-term keto is good for you, or is the best diet that you can be on. Mm-hmm. And I do a lot of high-intensity workouts. I do CrossFit predominantly. And so I dump a lot of glycogen. Every time I work out, and I wear a continuous glucose monitor, I see that my blood sugar spikes dramatically and then recovers really quick. But that's just a sign that my body is requiring and using glucose as a form of fuel, right? And so in the absence of dietary carbohydrates, where does my body get the glucose from? Well, it's from glycogen stores in my liver and in my muscle tissue. And once those stores are emptied or partially emptied, they have to be replenished. Mm-hmm. And if you don't eat carbs, the body has to make glucose from non-carbohydrate sources. And that's a process called gluconeogenesis. Mm-hmm. And for a while, I thought that's the default metabolic pathway to fuel those cells that require glucose. There are several in the body that cannot thrive on, or that cannot use ketones or fatty acids that need glucose. I thought that's the default process, but I've come to realize a little bit that it might be, to an extent, a backup process. Mm-hmm. So it's not ideal, I think, to rely on gluconeogenesis to support glucose to those organs and cells that need it, especially when you dump it every single day, because replenishing those glycogen stores is not something that happens within an hour. It takes a little bit, can take up to 24 hours. So if you work out every single day, roughly at the same time, then you just replenish your stores and you empty them again.
Mhm.
And while that's happening, you might actually feel the downsides or the side effects of not having enough glucose.
Mhm.
That's when if you are on a carb-based diet and suddenly you stop eating carbs, you don't feel so great because your body needs glucose and there is none. And that's the same principle basically. So for me personally, I've noticed that doing keto long-term in combination with high-intensity workouts, where I have to recover fairly quickly before I hit it again, is not ideal.
Mhm.
If you don't do CrossFit, if you don't do any high-intensity workouts, if you primarily if you're an endurance athlete, if you just enjoy walking 2 hours every day instead of hitting the gym, then I think there is a much better compatibility of a ketogenic lifestyle than if you're a CrossFit athlete or a sprinter or something, or someone who really relies on glucose as a primary source of fuel during those intense exercises.
Mhm.
So it depends a little bit. I guess there is and I have days where I don't eat a lot of carbs, especially when I don't work out, and I feel, especially from a mental clarity perspective, I can tell the difference when I'm running on ketones versus when I'm running on sugar. Because with sugar, the problem is, if you eat carbs, your blood sugar goes up, then it goes down, then it goes up. And whenever it's down for a moment until you stabilize, you might not feel so great. You might feel a little, sleepier than usual, or more tired, with a little bit less energy, maybe a little bit less mental clarity. If your blood sugar is stable all the time, meaning you don't eat sugar or carbs, then you don't have those issues. So there are pros and cons. And I think it depends a little bit of, on your individual circumstances, whether or not you should be doing keto or not, or maybe a combination like I do. As I said, and sometimes I eat very few carbs, I'm in ketosis. Other days I eat a lot of carbs, and I feel fine too.
Mm-hmm.
I think the important part really is metabolic flexibility.
Yes.
At the end of the day, that's what matters, because what if you have to skip a meal? What if you don't have access to your favorite fruits, or whatever the case might be? You don't want to deteriorate and fall apart just because you have to skip a meal, right? Mm-hmm. So metabolic flexibility, the ability of using fat or carbs for fuel, depending on what's available, I think that's really the critical point. And if you're metabolically healthy, you are metabolically flexible. If you're not, then that's an issue that should be looked at.
Absolutely. I love metabolic flexibility. And I love that you brought up that we should maybe have some variances in our day, because traditionally in the wild, if we didn't have a grocery store that we got to go to every week, we would have variances. What are you going to find this time of year? You're going to find in the summer roots and tubers and fruits, and you could get some meat too out there too if you were a skilled hunter, But in the winter, what do you have access to? You have more of that access to just killing some meat for your winter. Or if you were lucky enough to can things from the summer, maybe you have a little bit of that, or maybe you have some leftover tubers. But we forget about that, because now we live in this modern world where we can go out and get whatever we want. But just because you can have something doesn't mean you should. And I can't tell you how many people, myself included, that when I took a keto approach a long time ago, it would maybe resolve some things, like maybe you have the mental clarity, but it attacked my adrenals, because I needed, as a high intensity person, or as a person that teaches fitness classes, and I teach all of this stuff that requires brain power, nutrition classes, fitness classes, education programs, I needed that glucose, and it kind of wrecked my adrenals, and my sleep suffered and everything. So I see it time and again, people coming in with nutrition consultations that have been keto a long time. They're like, it worked for a while and now it's not working. And so that's where I'm glad you mentioned that for a certain population, there are those people like epilepsy and other issues that they can thrive on a keto diet, but it doesn't mean that it's for everyone, and it has to be done appropriately. And I think that's the missing button too, is a lot of people think they're doing keto, but they're really not. But to that effect, it's like, if we would look at things from the standpoint of, am I eating earth-based foods, like something that I could naturally go out in the wild and then make it in my kitchen? Even something like orange juice. I mean, you could go and grab oranges and make your own orange juice, right? But you can't make your own Dorito. You can't make your own, like keto cupcake, right? It'd be very difficult to do that. And so I think it's really about finding those foods that allow you to have a little bit of that flexibility. Like you talked about, some ketones one day and maybe a little bit of shifting to
Mm-hmm.
glucose the next day, depending on what your activity is. So yeah.
Yeah.
And what did you notice going more like animal based when you shifted from keto to doing more of like an animal based eating?
I felt that my sleep changed. I want to say it improved, not necessarily in terms of how much deeper REM sleep I would get or how much time I would spend in the restorative phases of sleep, but I would have to get up less often and I wake up less often. Or if I wake up, I mean, everyone wakes up, during sleep, during certain cycles when you're getting, out of deep sleep, maybe out of REM sleep into light sleep, then you might wake up momentarily. Most of the time you don't remember in the morning, but it happens. But what I've noticed is that if I do longer fasts or if I do keto, I tend to run out of glycogen sometime during the night. And when that happens, my brain senses it and says, something is not right. We need energy that we don't have right now. And so my cortisol levels would spike. And if I wake up during that time, I have trouble falling back asleep because I'm, my body is like, okay, we are in, something is not right. We need to do something. And if I have carbs before going to bed, then I don't have that. I might still wake up, but I fall, asleep right away, or fall back asleep right away, and I don't stand up. My head doesn't start spinning. If I don't have glucose, if I run out of glucose, I might be up for half an hour, 45 minutes, and some would argue, well, people back in the days, they cut their they cut the night in half. They would wake up at the midnight, do something and then go back to sleep. I don't know, could be, but I feel like I sleep better. I'm more rested in the morning if I don't have those interruptions.
Right. I'm so glad you brought that up because I can't tell you how many people I've heard from that have that issue of why am I waking up in the night? Well, maybe you had more of an active day and you didn't meet those nutritional needs for that day. You were too low in carbohydrates or you were too high in something else, and what I liked about like your earth-based, animal-based approach is like I saw a charcuterie board in one of your pictures where you had like, all these different meats, but you also had some cherries on there. Like it's not like you're avoiding foods that are, made with sugar. Like you said, you started this journey just lowering your sugar intake, but it sounds like it was more of the processed sugar. You're still getting the good aspects of glucose with honey and fruits and things like that, right?
Yeah, we have beehives, so we do eat a lot of honey. We just harvested a couple of weeks ago 65 pounds, so we certainly do eat honey. We do have berry bushes and apple trees and stuff. So we eat seasonal fruits. We eat sweet fruits. I don't think the fructose in fruits is bad. We try to stay away from, as you said before, processed stuff, products that I cannot easily make myself by just going outside and collecting them, gathering them, and turning them into something that I can then consume. And yeah, that I do. I think that the whole ketogenic journey really helped me understand my body better and how it reacts and what it needs and doesn't need. I'm actually currently writing an article about how I fixed my IBS, or irritable bowel syndrome, that I've had for decades, until I realized, well, it's actually the food that I eat. And in particular, when I started paleo, maybe just to talk about that for a brief moment. In the beginning, paleo for us meant a piece of meat and maybe grilled vegetables. Usually there was zucchini, because we grilled them, and together with a piece of steak was great. That was for us paleo. And at some point we realized, well, there is actually, paleo can be a lot of things. There are cookbooks how to make stuff paleo friendly, and then suddenly everything can be paleo, and baking and cakes and everything is paleo as long as you use the right ingredients, so to say. And my issues, and when we started paleo, all my issues disappeared. Like almost overnight, suddenly no more bloating, abdominal pain, nothing. All of that was gone. And I'm like, wow, paleo fixed it. And suddenly, the paleo diet caused that stuff again. I didn't understand it. I'm like, why? I'm still doing paleo. What's the problem? And it was then the symptoms were getting worse when I started keto, because in particular with keto, everything is nut based, all the treats, nut butter, nut flour, almond flour, all of those things that are considered, healthy or keto friendly, low carb, what have you. it made everything worse. And then I realized, just because my initial goal with adventuring into that whole Paleolithic eating was to mimic the diet our ancestors had.
Mm-hmm.
Fat bombs, keto cupcakes, none of that they would have. That's all. Those foods didn't exist until a few years ago.
Right.
And so I realized that just because something fits within a certain narrative doesn't necessarily mean it's good for me or good for anyone else, for that matter. And so, by removing all of those things and really going back to, okay, what are the foods that I can hunt or gather myself, and yes, there are, you can get nuts from the outside, but, eating a couple of nuts is different to eating nut butter, which has concentrations of all of the, not only the nutrients, but also the anti-nutrients, and maybe the, inflammatory fatty acids that, nuts are more rich in than maybe, animal-based fats. Mm-hmm. And all of those things. And I'm like, wow, this is, it's more important to not to adhere to a certain dietary framework, but just to eat what comes naturally to us. What is it that we have naturally access to? If I go outside and I can hunt a deer, I can get raspberries, I can get maybe collect some nuts, whatever, maybe find some carrots. And if you do that, I think you're way better off than following a specific dietary pattern, which might include things that we just made up, for the sake of convenience or taste or what have you.
Yeah. So for those listening that have irritable bowel, it's as simple as like not taking all the almond flour and all these crazy ingredients and making this really, like you said, anti-nutrient cupcake that's supposed to satisfy some sort of craving. Instead, maybe you need just a really big spoon of honey or some fresh squeezed orange juice or something you can make right in your kitchen for that sweet treat, So I really love that you are talking in terms of seasonally and approaching it from like how I tell my clients is like, go to the grocery store and pretend you're out in the wild. Like, don't buy anything that you couldn't actually collect in the wild, or maybe take a month off from the grocery store and go to your library and learn how to forage and see what all you would eat. I mean, that'd be like one of the best diets somebody could do is like, I'm going to take 30 days and live off of whatever's around me. And you're probably not going to have a lot of calories because it's very fibrous, good quality carbs and then meat that you're going to have access to. So anyway, that's actually good to, go ahead.
A funny example, you just said it. We watched not too long ago an episode of Alone, 100 Days in the Arctic.
Oh.
Have you seen that show? I think it's on Hulu or whatever. And so basically what they send a couple of people, everyone is alone, but there is, it's somewhere in the Arctic and it's in fall, approaching winter. And so you have to survive by yourself. You can bring 10 survival items and you have to survive for 100 days. So you have to build shelter, you have to hunt, you can forage, you can do whatever you want to. Just try to survive or tap out. And every single one, and there were apparently a couple of vegans on the show as well. It didn't make it very long, but every single, and not all of those were carnivores or, particularly meat eaters that participated in the show. They were just regular, survival people, outdoorsy people, what have you, some military people, special forces, etc. And every single one said, what I need fat and I need animal protein. Those few berries that I could collect here and the moss that I could scrape off a rock or whatever, this is not going to cut it. Once it gets cold, I need fats. Not even, finding or hunting rabbits was enough, because rabbits are so lean that they wouldn't have enough fat to give you enough energy. Because if you think about it, protein is structure, carbs and fat are the sources of energy. You need either or. In winter, when it gets cold, or even out in the wild, chances are, unless you find some mushrooms, maybe some berries, you're not going to find enough to satisfy your caloric needs just in carbs. You need fat. Where does the fat come from? Not from the nut butter that grows on trees. You have to hunt animals, right? You have to get organs. You have to get, their fat and stuff. And that was such an eye opener, because anytime someone tells me, oh, but this or that is fat, or be it plant-based or whatever, I'm like, just go into the Arctic for 100 days and you tell me then, what you ate and how you survived. It's not going to be your spinach and your kale, I'm pretty sure of that.
Yes. Yeah. No, absolutely. And in fact, I think I haven't pulled up the study yet, but I heard someone else mention that plant-based protein is actually only like, I think 60% bioavailable by the gut, whereas
Yeah.
animal-based protein is
Mhm.
90%. So, I mean, that
Yeah.
stands to reason why, we want to include those animal proteins as much as possible. Now,
Yeah.
shifting gears and going back to sleep, because you were talking all about sleep, and I'm with you. If I don't eat enough
Mhm.
during the day, and especially get some glucose during the day, I wake up at night and my body's like, I need something, So,
Yeah.
but you have an interesting video on how body temperature affects sleep. And obviously, we know that
Mhm.
body temperature relates to thyroid too. So tell us about that, body temperature and sleep.
Yeah, so for most of my life, I went through waking up in the middle of the night, being either too hot or too cold, depending on where I would sleep. And if in a hotel, you can obviously turn on the AC, but then the covers are so thick, and it's always a battle for me because I tend to run hot.
Yeah.
Generally, I sweat a lot,
Mhm.
and I'm just warm more often than I'm cold. And so before we introduced temperature as a factor in our sleep, we would just have a regular mattress. And especially when we came to sleeping in Austria, because I'm from Austria, that's where I grew up. So sleeping there is a little bit different because everyone has their own. Even if you have like a larger bed, everyone has their own cover, or sheet or whatever. There is all like king size thing where everyone
Yeah.
pulls on each side to get enough of the sheet and stuff.
It's so
But you typically
brilliant. I
only
don't
have
know why
one.
we don't do that here.
Yeah, and you don't tuck it in either, so your
Right.
feet are actually free and don't get toes don't get pushed down. It's so many funny things that I learned here in the US that people do for reasons I don't understand.
Yeah.
Um, but typically, what I've learned here in the US, you have 500 pillows in your bed. You have different layers of sheets. You have like a sheet, then you have like a duvet cover, and then you have a comfort or whatever. So many layers that chances are you're gonna sleep hot unless you remove everything and you just sleep with your sheet. But the thing is, the body changes temperature before you fall asleep and then throughout the night. So you don't always have the same temperature. Your body needs to drop its core temperature by about 2 degrees Fahrenheit before you can fall asleep. So that's something, if you're way too hot going to bed, you might have trouble falling asleep.
Mhm.
But then your temperature drops and then it warms up again in the second half of the night. So and I've noticed it very often in the beginning. I would be too hot and then I'm too cold, or vice versa. And I have to uncover, recover, uncover, recover. And all of that is obviously disruptive to your sleep, right?
Yeah.
And then, turning on the fan was, the most obvious solution for us, turning on the AC if it was too hot. But, that has, obviously it cools everything, or the fan isn't super effective. It doesn't really cool anything. It just gives you the appearance that you're a little cooler, but it doesn't change the temperature in the room. And turning on the AC, unless you and your partner, if you have one, are on the same page, you might be fine, but the person next to you is too cold, or, there are issues associated with those, system-wide approaches.
Yeah.
And so we discovered that by controlling actually the surface of your mattress in terms of temperature, you can support your body in those temperature changes. So you can say, okay, to fall asleep, I want to have a certain temperature that's, keeps me cool. But then as I get colder, maybe in the second half of the night, or if I warm up in the second half of the night, I'm going to change it a little bit. So you always have the perfect temperature, and you're never too hot and you're never too cold. And since we introduced that concept of a temperature controlled sleep mattress, our sleep has dramatically changed in terms of waking up in the middle of the night because it's too hot or too cold, or just being uncomfortable. Sometimes I remember from the past, I would wake up and I'm sweaty, I'm way too hot, and I have to uncover, wait to cool down, and then again later on I would be too cold, and it's just a mess. And if you've never, I think, experienced a controlling your temperature or controlling the surface of the mattress during sleep, I mean, I think you're missing out. That's one of those things where I'm like, I don't know how I could ever go back to not having that. And of course, when we travel, we have exactly that problem. And it's always, I'm like, oh, nice hotel and everything, but it's a regular mattress. So we're gonna be hot or we're gonna be cold. So people don't know. I didn't know until I, discovered solutions to that problem I didn't know existed.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting thing because I'm kind of leery of smart beds and smart technology because I'm really sensitive to EMF. So I'd be curious to know
Yes. Mm-hmm.
how it affected if you were able to measure it all. But also, you got me thinking. I think Europeans have a little better sleeping ideal than Americans because when I was in Norway and Germany, like you said, when you got to your little Airbnb, your bed had one little comforter on each side and it wasn't
Right.
tucked in and it was just one blanket. You didn't
Uh,
have 50 and you didn't have 50 different
yeah.
pillows. And that's how I sleep now. Ever since I got
Mm-hmm.
back from that trip, and this has been
Yeah.
almost 4 years ago, I sleep on top of just a flat mattress with a blanket on me. Like I don't have
Mm-hmm.
even a comforter. I just have my grandma's
Yeah.
Afghan that she made for me. My grandma made me an Afghan
Mm-hmm.
when I
Right.
was a teenager, and I
Mm-hmm.
just sleep with that and a pillow.
Mm-hmm.
And that keeps
Right.
me regulated. I think the idea of having too much stuff around us, I think just simplifying it like the European bed would actually solve a lot of sleep
Yeah.
problems too. Do you feel like you slept pretty good in Austria compared to the kind of bed system of the US?
You know, honestly, I don't know because the thing is, if you would have asked me 20 years ago, how do you feel? I would have said great,
Mm,
because I didn't know any better.
okay.
Um, and I don't, in particular, as far as sleep is concerned, I never paid much attention to sleep, the quality of my sleep or sleep consistency. So I would guess I probably didn't sleep great. But I was also younger, and I think when you're younger, you
Get away
can
with
get away with a lot of things and be fine. But the older you get, the more you realize that, hey, this doesn't really sit well with me, or I can't do this anymore. So I think I don't think I slept ideally, or ideal. I didn't sleep terribly, but it could have been better. But as you said, we only had, there was one sheet, there was no AC, so we were used to, a constant temperature that was typically the same as on the outside, unless it was winter.
Yeah.
So in summer in particular, be it outside or inside of the home, it was warm, and I guess you just get used to that. In here, you step into your home and suddenly there's a 20, 30 degree, temperature difference. And I think that also messes you up, or can mess you up. But regarding the EMFs, that's actually a very good point, because you mentioned initially, I also, I'm a technologist, but I've actually moved away from technology over the past couple of years, in various areas, because of, we are polluting ourselves with radiation that we don't fully understand yet what the long-term impact might be, and so in terms of the bed cooling solution, the part that goes on the mattress doesn't have any wires or anything, or it doesn't produce any EMFs, but the unit that controls it on the side, that does. So
Okay.
you need to have some separation in terms of distance, and then you can cover it also. For example, we have an EMF, where I use an EMF blocking blanket actually as
Yeah.
part of my sleep setup. So my body is covered, my head is not, but at least the rest of my body is covered. And you could, throw the same over, the unit if you wanted to prevent it from radiating towards the bed. But that's a good point. You don't want to have anything, obviously, you don't want to sleep on something that emits electromagnetic fields or radiation. That would be, I think, severely counterproductive
Yeah.
to improving your sleep.
Yeah, no, a really good point. I'm glad that you were able to test that keeping it farther away, we got to just keep the little monitor away, but the bed itself doesn't have that. So
Yeah.
going into the EMF and how it affects your health, what have you found? Like you said, you were into technology, but now you're kind of backing off and learning about EMF. Have you seen a difference in your health by doing that?
I'm doing so many things all the time that it's sometimes difficult to pinpoint what exactly is making an improvement versus what is not. But I think, and every time someone asks me, I this or that, what can I do to fix the problem? I think instead of looking at potential issues individually, you really need to look at your exposure to all the stuff that's not good for you. So consider it like a glass. If that glass is already full because of bad diet, poor sleep, EMFs, chronic stress, I don't know, whatever it might be, then any little thing on top, is going to cause an issue. It's going to cause maybe your immune system to respond or to remain active over extended periods, causing chronic inflammation. All of those things that are, then leads to potential issues, chronic disease, what have you. EMFs, I think, are just one of the many puzzle pieces that you need to look at. And my goal with everything I do is to remove as much of those potential issues as possible. To get as much back to a life that our ancestors would have lived, without completely removing ourselves from society. Because ultimately, if you really want to go back to the roots, you're going to live somewhere in the sticks. You don't have a computer and a cell phone, and most people, probably don't want to do this. And I get it. But you need to, make sure your glass is not full to the rim all the time, because every single misstep that you take from that point forward might then cause an issue. And then, it's not, oh, it's your diet, or oh, it's your sleep. It's probably all of that combined, and you need to get back to a reasonable baseline that allows your body to deal with all of those issues, because the human body is resilient. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here, right? But only to a degree. And, if you push it too far, you're going to end up with issues. And unfortunately, just, by looking around and looking at disease statistics and everything, most people are pushing it too far, and that's because of our modern life that has introduced so many things that are completely foreign to us from a metabolic and biological perspective. Evolution has taken on every little change in human diet throughout the course of evolution might have taken thousands of years. The transition from scavengers to hunters, none of that happened overnight or within 100 years. But if you look at the foods that most of us consume today, or the EMFs that we are exposed to, those are all incredibly new occurrences, within maybe the last 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, 200 years, maybe. Our bodies don't adapt to that stuff that quickly, as far as I know, And so I think that's really the issue. And EMFs, again, we've never, fortunately, so far suffered from any severe issues other than the IBS that I mentioned before. So I can't really tell by reducing our exposure, by doing all the things that we've done, like putting the stickers on my AirPods, so I know I see use the cable, which is the safer way to do it. But doing all those little things, I can't really tell at all. Suddenly I have energy again, or I'm healed of whatever disease I might have had. I've been fine, mostly. For most of my life, but I think overall I'm healthier, I'm happier, I think I'm enjoying life more by just being closer to how we should be living, versus trying to spin the hamster wheel and do what everyone else is doing, drink out of plastic bottles and be on the phone all the time, and not out in nature, and not understanding where food comes from, and just eating the Subway sandwich every day for lunch instead of, real food.
Right.
So.
No, I love that.
And that was a long-winded answer to a short question, but that's kind of.
No, it's so true. Like what you said is like, we can be in the modern world, but we don't have to do all of those modern things, because we could actually mimic a natural environment, but we just have to be cognizant enough to do it. So you can eat the world's best diet and do the world's best exercise program, but still be toxic and harming yourself daily with, chemicals and glyphosate, but also microwave sickness. I mean, being next to these microwave signals from our devices. I mean, this is a documented, published research study of microwave sickness, or exposure to too much non-native EMF. And this is the one of the main reasons I wanted to talk to you, because you are very prone to tell people, this is what we have to do. We have to mitigate, like you said, the cup, or what I call the stress bucket. Even if it's as simple as turning your Wi-Fi off at night, and turning your Bluetooth off when you're not using it, and turning Alexa and Google off when you're not using it, and looking up if you pull up your Wi-Fi and you've got 65 other Wi-Fis coming on, you might go, things that make you go, I might want to think about moving, because I'm getting all this constant radiation. And even if my life is free and easy and good, I have all these other stressors filling up my stress bucket that I can address. I can do something about it. And that's what we have to do, is mitigate that unnatural environment and try to make it as natural as possible. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
it's these, we've got smart devices. I mean, there's diapers now that will tell your phone when your baby's wet. You could just feel the
That's
diaper
just
and find
ridiculous.
out. But it's
Well,
like all of these things are affecting bees, they're affecting birds, they're affecting natural environments, and our heart. People don't remember that our heart is conductive. And so when we're sitting with a laptop in front of us or a tablet or even the phone right here, it's connecting and sending the wrong signals that could cause heart palpitations, that could cause heart malfunctions, because we are electric beings. And so we have to be careful with these electronic triangles or rectangles that we have in front of us all the time. I always say get out from behind the rectangle and go and live life, so
yeah.
that's why I was so excited that you're as passionate about that as well. So as far as like EMFs that you've kind of mitigated, what do you do during the day to deal with some of our exposures to 5G and to Wi-Fi and to Bluetooth?
Yeah, so especially during or at night, I turn off everything that I can. So on my phone, for example, I have an iPhone and I use Siri shortcuts, one of Apple's automation capabilities that are baked into the operating system to automatically turn off or turn on airplane mode and turn off Bluetooth and Wi-Fi at 8 p.m. and turn it back on in the morning when I get up. Nice. That's very simple fix. I mean, ideally, you don't even need your phone, next to you. I just have it in case, there's an emergency or something. But I've also started just leaving my phone in the office, because what do you do first thing in the morning? What do you tend to do? Grab your phone. Right. Is that really the first thing that you want to do in the morning? No. Probably not. And so that's one thing. I use a similar shortcut actually to turn my screen red in the evening. So you mentioned blue light before. We try to turn off lights at night that we don't need. We use more candles. And I'm now looking if I can find some old incandescent light bulbs that I don't usually sell here anymore. But that's another thing that we are trying to do to avoid blue light. But in terms of EMFs, we have a little cage on our smart meter, which is actually right behind this wall here behind me, like a Faraday cage, to prevent some of because that is a huge source of EMFs. I use my meter just to check it out, and that's definitely the highest anywhere in the house, just from this smart meter close to my office wall here. Then, as I said, I use a blanket for sleeping that covers my entire body. One thing that I haven't done it, but I'm going to shortly, is there are fabrics now, like shirts that are EMF blocking, that you can just wear if you sit in front of the computer all day, and even if you have to wear a suit or whatever, use it as an undershirt, and you're at least that part of your body, including your heart, is protected, or at least gets less of that radiation. And stickers I have a sticker on my phone. So if I put it in my pocket, the side that touches my thigh or whatever, is protected, so all the radiation goes away from my body. The same is with my AirPods here. There are stickers around, so it only goes to the outside, but not through my skull. Simple things like that you can really do immediately, and it doesn't cost you a lot to do that. But as you said, one of the most effective things is turn off Wi-Fi when you don't need it. We have a smart home that I kind of regret now that we even got into, where most of the light switches, and I can say, hey, smart assistant, turn on or turn off the lights, which is super convenient. But it also means that you need Wi-Fi, otherwise the stuff isn't working. And I told my wife, whenever we move and build our own home or whatever, we're gonna go back to regular light switches, or candles, or I don't know, something that's not LED, that's not modern, just back to the basics. If the sun is down, then and we have candlelight, and if we don't have candles, well, then let's go to bed. If the sun is down, you're supposed to be sleeping.
Right. No, I love that you use candles. That's brilliant, and it's so soothing at night too. I like to do that too. And going back to your light bulb thing, you might check out Swanwick Sleep, because they make anti-blue light bulbs, and so they're not like incandescent, but they're anti-blue light, so they have no blue light in them. So that's a nice thing too. I have their little night light in the kitchen in case anybody needs to get up in the night. But yeah, it's so interesting. Yeah, it's so interesting that we became a culture that it was hard to turn on a light bulb. Like it's hard to flick that switch. I know.
Yeah.
It's like so, but it's not just that. It's the modern world catches up with you. You know, you got all these great devices that make life seem easier, but yet it comes at a cost. It comes at the cost of our
Yeah.
you know, I like to vacuum my own floor. I don't need the Roomba to do it for me on a Bluetooth timer that tells it when to go.
Right.
I like to keep things, you know, I have my Jeep has crank down windows. I don't even have power windows because I'm
Right.
all about like go back to like less is more and keep it simple because
Yeah.
it's all these little things like we've been talking about that just keep that stress bucket lower and lower and then the things that we can't control, like if we do have Wi-Fi right next to us and we can't move, or you live in a home that at one point in time you wanted it to be a smart home and now you don't, okay, so we'll just dial in what we can dial in, and that's one less exposure. So now as far as like mitigating it naturally, do you like, it seems like from your videos you really like to be outside in the sunlight, and
Yeah.
I'm assuming you like grounding and earthing. So tell me like
Yeah.
your outdoor exposure.
And so my outdoor exposure starts really in the morning. So I start my day in the office, so to say, on my patio, and soak in the sunrise. First, actually, typically I'm out when it's still dark, and then I listen to the chickens going nuts in the coop, waiting for the door to open, and the sunrise coming up, and that's how I start. And then typically I go down barefoot and then play with the dog, and then we either go work out or we might have breakfast if we have early breakfast. And then during the day, at least once or twice a day, I go outside and I just sit in the sun. I take off my shirt and expose as much of my naked skin without sunscreen or any other toxins, to the sun, and just, we're not in the woods, but we are we have a lot of trees around. It's a very natural kind of, environment where we are. And, I just enjoy that. I listen to all the sounds, I try to do nothing and think about nothing and just, be present. I guess that's really one of the things that I not really had lost in the past, but it was more and more difficult for me because of, life is busy, and everyone's life is busy, and we are less and less present, be it with kids, be it with animals, be it, just with ourselves, just to have a moment and think about what am I doing, where am I heading, and is this really the way I want to go, And so I take the time during the day, usually around noon when the sun is strongest, I'm out without sunscreen, never use sunscreen. In the afternoon again, and then I typically take the dog for 1 or 2 walks, and with a nearby wood trail here where I go, and watch the deer running by and all. And the more and more I'm not at home, I think the better. And I really like my home, don't get me wrong, but the more and more I'm on the outside in nature, the better I feel. The better I sleep. And my wife has noticed exactly the same. The other day she came to me, you know what, anytime I'm out with the kids at the pool or whatever, and I spend 3-4 hours in the sun, I sleep better. I'm like, yeah, that's because, sunlight impacts our circadian rhythm, and be it the morning sun, be it the evening sun, all those different frequencies that, you see from morning to the evening, they all have an impact to varying degrees on our cellular activity and our sleep and everything that goes with it. And obviously when you're outside, you're less exposed to EMFs, at least not to man-made ones. Yes, there might be a power line, there might be, a cell phone tower, but fortunately we don't have either of those two in close vicinity. So
that's great. I love what you just said. It seems like so simple for people to listen to, just starting their day outside, taking those breaks throughout the day if they are working at home or working in an office where they can step outside. I mean, it's not like it's rocket science, like you're asking a lot of things of someone to mitigate some of that in EMF, but it's as simple as, maybe don't start right away on your phone, maybe start outside in nature, and maybe throughout the day, if you have to be on devices, just simply step outside and put your bare feet on the earth for just a couple minutes before you have to go back to work. Just those little things. It goes back to that. Here's your stress bucket getting a little lower, a little lower, a little lower, So I think that's so easy and accessible for people that are listening to this to just start to implement. And then there's extra things that are free that you can do, like you like cold plunging. I saw a video on that as well. So tell me about that.
Yeah, I got into cold plunging a couple of months ago. I mean, I always knew that, especially in Scandinavian countries, sauna and cold plunging are a big thing. And I've done saunas in the past, and when I grew up in Austria, but never quite the cold plunging. And so I got into that, and I felt that by exposing myself to this positive stressor, by having my body kind of go into an alarm reaction, by getting into sympathetic overdrive, where I'm like, get out of this, you're gonna die if you stay here. That's the natural reaction when you expose yourself or immerse yourself in cold water, be it, just turning on the cold shower and walking into it, or really getting into a cold plunge. And one of the things that I have learned is to control my breathing and thus my stress. Mm-hmm. So getting in and just focusing really on your breathing and nothing else. Mm-hmm. And you realize two things. A, you can control how your body responds to stress. You can, calm yourself down. You get more into parasympathetic mode. You go away from that sympathetic fight or flight response, and you go back to, your baseline. And also that you can really endure incredibly uncomfortable things and temperatures in particular. Mm-hmm. And I think that's beneficial for a couple of reasons, because, we are typically so comfortable, it's climate controlled home, climate controlled car, if we are outside for 2 minutes, we are sweating, we need to get in somewhere because I can't, deal with the heat or the cold in winter, whatever the case might be. But ever since I've started exposing myself to those more quote unquote extreme temperatures, be it, on the cold side with the cold plunge or the warmer side with the sauna, I now feel fine in just outside. It doesn't matter if it's hot or if it's cold. I got used, or I was exposed to worse. Typically the winters here are not so cold that would mimic an ice bath. And I'm typically not naked when I'm outside. Whereas I am kind of in the cold plunge. I really got used to those extremes and allow my body to just be more comfortable in those extreme environments, and also learn how to control my stress and my stress response. And that's really something I believe we can all benefit from, because we are stressed, or there are stressors everywhere, be it at work, be it with the kids, be it, home, family, what have you. There's always a potential to get stressed. And if you understand, first of all, identify when you get stressed, and then be able to respond to it in a way that lowers your stress levels, I think it's super beneficial. And it has really helped me in other parts of my life where I'm like, okay, I'm going to get stressed, but okay, if I just focus on breathing for a few, seconds, I can get back to baseline and then, fix the problem or whatever that, I need to do to move on.
I think that's brilliant, because it really goes back to choosing habits that make you more present. Like you said, like being outside, you're not outside like flipping on your phone through Facebook first thing in the morning. You're listening to the chickens, you're watching the sun come up. So you're present with that time. Or if you're playing with your dog, you're with your dog. Or if you're playing with your kids, you're with your kids. We're not trying to multitask. You had mentioned a while back that time seems to be going by faster. And I think it's how we're spending our life. Like, I think we're spending our life trying to do so much at one time that we're running out of time to do everything. Whereas if we'll take a step back and simplify, yes, our environment, but also simplify our time and go, this is the time I spend with my kids. This is where I'm not on a device. This is the time when I spend with my spouse where I'm not on a device. This is the time when I spend outdoors by myself, just being present with nature and experiencing things that help us strengthen. I mean, there's some controversy on cold plunges, whether it's a stressor to the body, so you're adding one more stress. So of course, somebody with a high stress, if their elevated cortisol and adrenaline is sky high, maybe they don't want to jump in a cold plunge. But maybe they want to take a step out of the constant air conditioned environments of, like you mentioned, their house, their car, and constantly trying to be comfortable, to get a little uncomfortable and feel their body and then adapt. Like, we have a free sauna outside right now. If you step outside my house or my camper, I'm a full-time camper. If you step outside right now, it's 100 degrees. So I have my own free sauna now. So I go sit out there and I'm just like, I'm just going to sweat, because if I had a sauna, that's what I'd be doing. I'd be in infrared heat, and I'd be
Right.
sweating, and the sun is infrared and I'm outside sweating. So you can actually make the best of it and
Yeah.
make it like a therapeutic
It's full
experience.
spectrum, right?
Yeah, and those cold plunges, if we didn't have a hot water heater, chances are we're going to be going in the local river that's flowing really fast and cold
Right.
to get clean, because you don't want to go sit in a stagnant body of water to get clean. So
Right.
I think it's
That's
just
right.
thinking in terms of how can we mitigate this man-made environment and make it more natural,
Yeah.
and help ourselves grow, not just by lifting weights and growing muscles, but grow internally. Like I can drive down the road and not use my air conditioning and just roll down my window and get that hot air blowing on me, because before the invention of air conditioners in cars, people just rolled down their windows. So it's like, I think we've almost become too comfortable and too expectant that life should be comfortable. Don't you agree?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And the problem really is that, whatever, if you don't, I have a dog coming in the picture.
Oh, yeah, we're dog friendly here. It's okay.
You're like, I want to play.
Yeah.
I think the problem is if you don't challenge yourself, be it mentally, be it physically, then you deteriorate, right? And a great example is, there's a reason why astronauts, in the ISS, they do resistance training, because if they don't, their bone tissue, their muscle tissue deteriorates and they come back and can't walk, right?
Yeah.
And that's just, a very obvious example, but it's the same with, if you never expose yourself to those natural and environmental stressors, be it cold, be it heat, be it, lifting heavy stuff if you need to, or, sprinting by running away from something, then you're going to deteriorate in those areas, and you don't want that. You want to, get stronger, more resilient, ideally, or at least maintain what you have. But if you're just comfortable all the time, you just sit around, you eat on the couch, you don't move, you don't sweat, you do nothing, your body deteriorates, your body adapts to that. And unfortunately, that's not always a good thing. Yes, you want to adapt, but in the direction of getting stronger, fitter, healthier, but not the opposite.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now, so we're going to shift gears one more time towards the end of this podcast here and talk about the liver, because our liver is our project manager, and it seems to be something you're pretty passionate about, because you actually have a supplement line that is a liver glandular, which I happen to be super impressed with, because your liver supplement is the first I've seen. Maybe there's other out there, but that is in a glass bottle, not plastic, because golly, everything in our environment is plastic. And you even have a metal lid on your bottle too, on your supplement. Yeah. So let's talk about the importance of liver, taking in liver, because there is a lot to be said about this project manager in our body, that by eating liver, we can actually enhance our own detoxification organ, so to speak.
Yeah. So the main reason why I decided to develop this supplement is because we've been taking multivitamins in the past, knowing that, our food, be it, even if it's organic, fruits and veggies, they're not as nutrient dense anymore as they used to be. A lot of the organic berries, for example, they're grown in water and not in soil. So, you could argue, yes, it's organic, but is it really as nutritious as something that grew in soil? Soil is arguably one of the most important aspects of growing anything, right? And the nutritious aspects of anything. Growing stuff in water with liquid fertilizers, not so sure about that. But generally speaking, even the soil, is not as good anymore as it used to be, because of monocrops and the heavy use of pesticides and fertilizers and whatnot. And so I said, and plus I don't eat a whole lot of plants, and plants are, in my opinion, not an ideal source of micronutrients, because most of them are either poorly absorbed. There might not be existent at all in plants, like heme iron or vitamin B12 or, vitamin K2. You don't find that stuff in plants, right? So you need it from animal-based sources. And liver happens to be, organs in general, but liver happens to be one of the most, if not the most nutrient-dense food on the planet, containing, I think it's over 25 vitamins and minerals and coenzymes and cofactors and peptides in the most bioavailable form. So if there is one thing, in my opinion, that you should be supplementing with or consuming, ideally, you eat fresh liver. You know, I eat raw liver a lot, but not everyone likes that, especially not raw. Cooked, I don't like the taste very much, to be quite honest. I prefer it raw. But even cooked, there are not so many, or in any form, there are not a lot of people. People don't like the taste and texture. And I understand it's not not the most palatable food on the planet if you grew up on eating, sugars and all of those hyper palatable foods that, most of us are eating. Liver doesn't taste good for most people. And so I'm like, okay, it's important, but most people don't like it. Well, an easy way to get more liver into your diet is to freeze dry it and put it into the powder into a capsule, because it's tasteless. There is no texture. It doesn't really smell. I mean, it's a little bit beefy, but it doesn't really smell bad. And it's very convenient. And by just taking a few capsules every day, you get your serving of fresh liver, So if you eat, let's say, or if you take 3 grams of freeze-dried liver, it's the equivalent of 1 ounce of fresh liver. Putting liver into a capsule, it's super convenient for the kids and for everyone who doesn't like the taste to get liver multiple times a week. I typically eat it every day, even though I consume fresh liver as well. But, there is such a thing as maybe eating too much of certain nutrients, especially fat-soluble ones like vitamin A. Liver is very rich in vitamin A, but the amounts that, you would get from real food, I've never seen anyone, have an issue with too much vitamin A unless, you eat like the liver of a seal or of a polar bear. That might be a different story, but cow's liver or bovine liver is typically not an issue. And so that's why I decided, this is something I personally want to supplement with every day. I want my family to supplement with. And, everyone who, thinks they're not getting enough nutrients or that might not have, the animal-based diet that we have, might benefit from that as well. So I came up with that supplement, and one of the things, obviously, I tried to find, first of all, manufacturing partners that could deliver the quality, non-defatted, freeze-dried instead of heat-dried, from New Zealand cattle, because arguably, the best cattle in the world comes from New Zealand. They can graze year-round. Here in the US, it's still seasonal. And all of the other factors I was looking for, and then finally found that. And then the next problem was, finding someone who can do glass bottles. And you'd be surprised, most manufacturing companies have no experience with bottling glass. They're, because everything is plastic by default, be it from the heat induction and of the caps and everything. It was all a mess. So finally, I figured out someone who can do it. But I still had to source the bottles separately myself, because I had no clue where to get them from. I had to get the lids from another manufacturing company, bring all of that together, super complicated. If I were just to go with plastic, it would be, super easy. But we decided we want to go away from plastic. We want to do the glass and metal lids, do it the right way, the most expensive way, the most complicated way, also for shipping, because glass can break. A plastic bottle is not going to break. And but I think it's worth it. It's if that means I have less margin, because I obviously want to also have an attractive price point, that it's not twice as expensive as some of the other products on the market. In fact, I think we are actually at or below, because my product has 45 servings instead of 30, so you actually get 50% more product for roughly the same price. So all of that, I'm like, okay, I'm doing this because if there is one thing someone should be doing, in my opinion, is to include organ meats in their diet. If you don't want to eat them fresh, which is what I would recommend, do it freeze-dried. And liver is really the baseline, in my opinion. There are other organs that I think you should be eating as well. But if there is only one organ, you cannot have a second one, be it for budgetary reasons or other reasons, make it liver, And so having that supplement, the baseline, I think is a good thing a good point to start, to really make sure you have all the nutrients and micronutrients, particularly your body needs, because from there it's much easier to fix other issues. If you're deficient in certain nutrients, your body's going to have a hard time repairing, recovering, and doing all of the other metabolic processes that are important, to detox, to, do what you need to do to thrive at the end of the day. And so that's, in a nutshell, why I decided to start with beef liver and, put out a multivitamin at the end of the day with from real food sources that you can actually absorb. You're not going to see your urine turn bright yellow because of all the B vitamins from the synthetic stuff, that gets flushed out and that your body cannot use. give you stuff that your body can actually readily use, and that's affordable.
Yeah. No, 100%. Like, I can't tell you how many times as a nutritionist I've had people go, well, can you recommend a good multivitamin? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to either give you cod liver oil or I'm going to give you a liver capsule because that's the ultimate. I mean, I just had Morley Robbins on the podcast, and he was like, you really have to take something that is going to ensure that you're getting copper and vitamin A, which liver and cod liver oil both are very rich sources of both of those and easy to take in. And if you don't want to eat them, I like eating liver. I don't like it. I haven't tried it raw, so that might be a little challenge.
Try it. You like it better.
But I do like cooking it, and I like to eat it. But not very many people do. So I think the freeze-dried option is probably a really good thing to have on hand, especially like you said, if you're worried about toxicity, then just take it a couple times a week, just to ensure that you're getting that vitamin A constantly coming in. It's so important for the thyroid, so important for the skin and the health of your overall system, as well as that copper helping iron get oxygen into the cells. So, I mean, you can't go wrong taking this, and done in a way that's really, you went to the nth degree. And I always say you get what you pay for, and you're not even at the price point where you probably should be with how much detail you put into your product. So we'll have the link to your MK supplements, which is where your liver capsule is. And you've been generous enough to give to my listeners a 15% discount with the code Jodelle15. So I appreciate that. So check that out in the show notes. And as we wrap up here, where can people see all of your great videos, and where can they connect with you? How can they work with you? What's that look like?
So my blog, michaelkummer.com, pretty straightforward, where I publish what I know, basically all the stuff that I find out, things that I experiment with on my own or with family members. I publish there, products that I review. I'm somewhat active on Instagram, record reels and quick videos about tips or tricks or stuff that I do on the outside, be it with the chickens, with the bees, with the dog. We have a separate homestead account where we show more about the gardening, how we care about for the chickens and our bees, the honey extraction, all of those things, if that's something you're interested in. And I also have a YouTube channel, as you mentioned before. YouTube is still a little bit of a hobby in comparison to my blog, so I put stuff out there, but it's not nearly as polished, I guess, as my blog is. And if you want to reach out to me, just go to my blog and shoot me a message from there. I also respond to all of my Instagram DMs every few days or so. I'm not on there every single day, but I typically respond to everything unless it's something inflammatory and I don't want to hear it.
Awesome. Well, Michael, this has been great. And I know everybody's taken away a really great slew of information and tips from this. So I hope that it's very beneficial to them and to you as well. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate your time. I'll have all the links that you mentioned in the show notes, and you guys be sure to check out his podcast on YouTube as well. So thanks so much for this.
Thank you, Jodelle. I appreciate it.
And go out with your dog now, because he's been waiting for you. One last question as I let you go. Yes. What has been your exquisite moment today? Audrey Hepburn has a quote that says, "I believe that every day should have at least one exquisite moment." What's yours been?
One exquisite moment. That's a good point. Today, let's see, what has today been? I think today it was this morning when my youngest one came out and sat with me on the porch and looked at the sunrise. I think that was pretty cool.
I love when that happens. My daughter does that with me sometimes too. So very good. Well, go outside with your pup and enjoy your day.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Every cell needs energy to perform, and one way that I like to provide fuel for those cells and those little mitochondria in there is with methylene blue. Methylene blue is literally food for your mitochondria. It delivers oxygen into the cell on so many different levels, and if you haven't tried it yet, I want to tell you about the product that I love from Lifeblood. So their methylene blue, lifeblood.co's methylene blue is my favorite for purity reasons, for quality
assurance knowing I'm getting a really great product. I did a podcast with the founder, Adam Marafiotti, so please check that out. But also check out lifeblood.co and use my code Jodelle, Jodelle, to save on your purchase of their methylene blue product. I also love their magnesium. I love their magnesium powder that you make your own magnesium out of. So check out all of their wonderful products and use my code to help you save. Methylene blue is also very anti-parasitic, antiviral, antimicrobial. So methylene blue to the rescue. Get yours today. Light bulb moment. I have an idea for you. How about getting an anti-blue light bulb? That's right. You could put these in your house at night and they would not allow any blue light after the sun goes down. I have these in my lamps and I really love them because it's like this amber glow at night that's not offensive to my melatonin at all. Now you may know that I'm kind of a blue light blocking glass junkie. In fact, when I'm not wearing this pair, I'm wearing this pair, yes, and when I'm not wearing this pair, I might put on this pair. And in case I don't want to wear my contacts, I actually have my prescription pair. Check that out. You can kind of see that it's different than the other lenses. This one's actually going to have my big thick Coke bottle glass prescription in there, so that I can wear these and not have to have my contacts in at night. So yeah, I'm kind of a blue light blocking junkie, but what I'll say is that my sleep has never been better, and it's as simple as putting on a pair of glasses or using a light bulb that blocks out the blue light at night, or perhaps you want a little night light for your kids, because here's the thing. Blue light night lights actually cause myopia in children. That's right, they can become nearsighted if they're exposed to blue light after dark. So getting one of these anti-blue light night lights for the kids or for yourself, stick it in the bathroom, stick it in the kitchen for those late night munchies, which you shouldn't have if you're blocking blue light. That's right, blue light actually stimulates your cravings after dark. So by wearing these glasses, not only will you sleep better, but you may not get those late night munchies that are so prevalent. So Fit for 10, that'll save you 10% off either your favorite pair of glasses or the really cool light bulbs and night lights. Well, if you've listened to me at all, you'll know that I preach protein, and protein is the building blocks of every healthy cell in our body. And you need protein throughout the day to sustain really good, healthy cell turnover. And I get asked a lot, what about if I don't have time for protein? I can't really get in a meat source. It's okay. I love a good whey protein. And my favorite recently has been this grass-fed whey from Iconic Protein. I love their ingredients. I love that they use a monk fruit. It's simple ingredients. There's literally 4 ingredients in this protein powder. And it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. There's a lot of grass-fed protein powders out there that are like boutique-y, and they're all about, $50, $60, $70. No, this guy's going to run you less than $30. And with my discount code, you're going to get 15% off. So check out Iconic Protein. They also have, for those of you really on the go and you don't have time for anything, even blending up a protein drink, you can get their Immunity Coffee. Now, I love my coffee. And this Iconic drink is made with MCT oil and all natural ingredients, and it actually has a few vitamins and minerals that help with immunity. So this is something I'm going to grab. I'm going to add it to my coffee. Maybe I'm going to drink it on its own. It's a really nice way to grab and go. So for those of you that say, I don't have time for protein, now you do. Check out Iconic Protein and their Immunity Coffee, as well as their different flavors of protein powder. And use my code Jodelle, Jodelle, to save 15% off your Iconic Protein purchase. Hey guys, are you in the Midwest? Are you in the East Coast? Are you in Brazil? Are you in Asia? It doesn't matter where you are. I would love to work with you as your nutritionist. And so just to let you know, I offer nutrition consulting worldwide. You can work with me anywhere. I have clients all over the world, and I love to spend time over the internet with each one of them, figuring out their specific needs. So your specific needs, what deficiencies are you having? What symptoms are you dealing with daily that we can address for you? So that's what I, as a nutrition detective, like to get to the bottom of. I ask you a ton of questions. We meet over Zoom or over FaceTime, whatever is convenient for you, and we discuss all of your specific needs. If you would like to work with me, just shoot me an email, getfitwithjodelle@gmail.com. That's getfit, getfitwithjodelle@gmail.com. And let's set up a 15-minute free call for you, just to see if I'm a good fit for you as a nutrition therapy practitioner. Again, email me, getfitwithjodelle@gmail.com, and let's get you set up feeling better, lose that unwanted weight that you have going on, lose those symptoms that you have hanging around, and optimize your health as best we can.